UKIP MEP Godfrey Bloom was on the programme yesterday with his views on maternity rights. He's back in the news today. This time he was on video saying we shouldn't be sending aid to somewhere he called Bongo Land. Mr Bloom was filmed speaking at a meeting in Wordsley near Stourbridge in July, and it was passed to the Guardian newspaper. Here's a clip from that recording.
How we can possibly be giving £1 billion a month when we're in this sort of debt to Bongo Land is completely beyond me. To buy Ray-Ban sunglasses, apartments in Paris, Ferraris, and all the rest of it goes with most of foreign aid. F-18s for Pakistan. We need a new squadron of F-18s, a couple of squadrons. Who's got the squadrons? Pakistan, where we send the money.
So where is Bongo Land? Are we really sending money abroad to be spent on Ray-Bans, apartments in Paris and Ferraris, if you couldn't hear the whole thing there? Should a politician use this sort of language in a debate about foreign aid? You might agree with Godfrey Bloom. You think foreign aid's a total waste of money. You may not like his language, but you might agree with that. Maybe you're siding with David Cameron. He thinks it's in everyone's interests to build a more prosperous world. Otherwise, the problems of conflict, mass migration and uncontrollable climate change will come and visit us at home. There are many views on this. And let's get to welcome back to the Jeremy Vine Show, Godfrey Bloom. Hello, Mr Bloom.
Hello again, Paddy.
Hello. And George Galloway, the Respect MP for Bradford West, is on the phone. Hello to you, Mr Galloway.
Hi there.
Hi. Mr Bloom, UKIP have asked you not to use the phrase again. What was the phrase you used?
I used the phrase Bongo Land in much the same way as I would use, or anybody would use, the word Ruritania or the Third World. It's whatever you want it to be. There is no such place, of course, so I can't understand how anybody could be upset when an imaginary country.
Right, but so the UKIP chairman, Steve Crowther, has said, please don't use the phrase again, and you've just used it again.
But didn't you ask me to use the phrase? I'm sorry.
Well, I asked you to, but he asked you not to.
Oh, right, sorry. Oh, dear. I'm terribly sorry, party chairman. If I used it again, I didn't mean to. It slipped out.
What was the phrase that you used then?
I said, well, you just played the clip there. Everybody heard the clip. But let's get back to the really serious point. Let's get to the serious point. £1 billion a month in overseas aid, when in my constituency, I've got people in a queue waiting for cancer treatment, dialysis machines. We're cutting our A&E. We're making all these terrible sacrifices in this country, and we're giving away £1 billion a month, and we don't even know where most of it goes.
George Galloway, do you know where it goes?
Well, look, the fact that Godfrey is surprised that people find this offensive is, I suppose, the least surprising but most important part of this discussion. The UKIP profile of anti-immigration, red-faced Englishmen standing at the ports on the Channel shouting boo at Johnny Foreigner is the real UKIP. Nigel Farage, a more sophisticated man than people imagine, is not himself a racist, but he's clearly leading a coalition of the kind of supercilious, blustering racism that you've just been listening to. Anybody who thinks that describing the rest of the world as Bongo Land, not being offensive, doesn't deserve to be in politics.
So you're offended by Mr Bloom?
Well, I'm offended on the part of those who are insulted by it. I'm embarrassed as a British person that someone sitting in the European Parliament and doing rather well out of it should have these kind of views and express them, usually when they don't expect someone to be filming or recording it. But he's brought shame to the country with this language, short of having an imaginary bone in his nose when he said it. It's hard to see that it could be more offensive. The issues of immigration and the instability in the world due to the maldistribution of resources are vital and real issues, and David Cameron is right about that. You can't say that, as UKIP do, that you don't want foreigners coming here, but you want foreigners to continue to exist in a situation of dire poverty and underdevelopment. This is just a contradiction in terms.
So, Godfrey Bloom, you're an embarrassment. You've brought shame by your language. You could express this as a debate with George on foreign aid, but you've brought shame and embarrassed him because of the bongo ding-dong.
Well, of course, I've never heard so much nonsense. The actual point of the matter is everybody's saying, oh, gosh, isn't this offensive? But everybody seems to be offended on behalf of somebody else. Nobody actually I've spoken to is personally offended because no offence was intended. So that's absolute nonsense. And incidentally, that was a 40-minute speech without notes delivered. It was a public open speech, and it's been on YouTube, I think, now for something like 4 or 5 weeks. So this isn't some clever thing that The Guardian have dug up. And let me just put George Galloway right, because he needs a little bit of help on this one, I think. We're sending money to the Indian subcontinent, who have a nuclear-powered carrier, a space programme, F-16s for Pakistan, and would you believe some of our money actually goes to Argentina, where they've just bought 20 Mirage jets, which could be used against us. There's no audit trail. There's no audit trail. We don't know where the money goes. £400 million of it a month, 400 million a month, goes to the European Union for them to distribute. And as I say, George Galloway should be putting his own constituents first in a very poor part of West Yorkshire. He should be putting them first, thank you very much, and not everybody else.
Well, these are legitimate debating points about the use of foreign aid. But you don't have to describe the people getting the foreign aid as bongo land. India is a vitally important trading partner with us, in which we're trying to do very much better. And incidentally, the aid program is designed to buttress that. It won't go down very well in the places we're seeking to win friends and influence people and maybe get 1 or 2 customers, Godfrey, to be describing their countries as bongo land. Everyone listening to this knows this in their heart. It displays, however, what's really in your heart. And what's really in your heart is a belief that the rest of the world is bongo land, and we live in some Elysian field that is superior to them. That's what lies behind your remarks. Everybody knows it. Otherwise, these words would not have come to your lips, unscripted, 40 minutes speech or otherwise. They came to your lips because they're in your heart, because that's what you really think of Johnny Foreigner. And it's the fact that you really think that, and that you're an elected UKIP member of European Parliament.
Can I get a word in here, Chairman? Can I speak? Am I allowed to speak on this programme?
Please speak now, and you joined us yesterday.
The programme. What are you talking about?
I am chairing, and I would like you to reply, Godfrey. Please go ahead.
Let me tell you what is in my heart. George Galloway doesn't know what's in my heart. My heart is... My country is in my heart. My constituents are in my heart. My people are in my heart. And when I see them not getting dialysis machines, when I see them not treated for cancer, when I see A&E wings closes, when I see us more than £1 trillion in debt, I say enough is enough. No more money to be sent abroad. Let's start at home. Charity begins at home. And incidentally, Mr. Galloway, the overwhelming response today has been in support of me.
Well, I'm sure that there are people whose knuckles are dragging along the pavement who like to think of foreigners as bongo land residents. I'm sure that's true. That's why UKIP gets the votes that it gets. But you can't pretend that you're offended by trailer posters from the Home Office. You can't pretend that you think it's not the British way to be profiling people on a racial basis, as Mr. Farage was doing just the other day on television and getting some credit for it. And yet, at the slightest excuse, when scratched, display this kind of mentality.
A question for
me.
me.
It's not the fault of anybody in the countries you're referring to in such insulting terms that there's a shortage of dialysis machines in Britain.
Now, a question...
That's the fault of the British government.
Okay, let me just...
Why don't you concentrate your fire on them instead of insulting foreigners?
Right. Now, a question from me, Mr. Galloway. I think you've both had an opportunity to address each other. If you look at how UK aid is spent, Mr. Galloway, a sixth goes to the EU to spend how it wants. So that's 800,000 was spent on a water park in Morocco. Iceland got 20 million. 5 million was spent in Bangladesh, setting up a question time-style television programme. What do you think about those sorts of spending of British taxpayers' money?
Well, I'll answer that, but this discussion isn't about foreign aid.
Well, it's about
the attitude displayed by UKIP towards people in poor countries.
Yeah, I
think these are legitimate debating points.
Yes, we'll have a go.
I'm not in charge of the British aid budget.
But if you were...
If I were, there may be some of those that you've referred to, if you've accurately described them, that would be questionable.
Right.
I have a long involvement in issues of foreign aid. What I'm saying to you is that there are billions of very poor people in the world. Many of them don't have access to water. Many of them don't have access to enough food or medicine. That makes an unstable and usually violent world, and it's in everyone's interests to reduce the inequality in the world, to try and help other people come up closer to our standards. Then, Mr. Bloom, they might not be so determined to get, by any means possible, out of their own countries into other people's countries.
Mr.
That's
Bloom,
just common sense.
How do you like those remarks? He's saying, yes, there are some bits of the budget he wouldn't spend, but the problem is the tone.
No, I don't accept that. I'm sorry, I simply just don't accept it. I believe that people should give money to charity. We're one of the most generous nations in the world. We give more to charity per capita than any other industrialised democracy. But what I would argue, it is not the responsibility of government to take from people in my constituency, some of whom are only trying to get by on £120 a week, to take tax off them and send it abroad when we don't even have a proper audit trail. For those who are rich, like David Cameron, who's a very wealthy man, sit down, get your chequebook out and give a cheque to save the children. Do not take it from my poor constituents in this country who are living on the breadline. I won't have it, and I never will.
George, do you think we're going to be... This is the tone now for the all the way up to the election?
Yes, we're into the dark territory of stirring racial fears, xenophobia, hatred of foreigners, whether European foreigners or in, as Mr. Bloom would have it, bongo land. This is the kind of road that in recessions right-wing politicians take. Mr. Bloom is an archetypal one, a Jim and Jag stockbroker belt bigot, and he brought shame on the country, and most civilised people in the country know it.
OK, that's to you, George, and to you, Godfrey Bloom. Thank you for joining us. One quick one from you. Do you going to put the language of the bongo behind you?
Well, I must be doing something right in politics if I can get that sort of ridiculous diatribe from George Galloway.
All right,
I must be doing something right.
OK, thank you both very much indeed for joining me. We were listening there to Godfrey Bloom, UKIP MEP for Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire, George Galloway, Respect MP for Bradford West. I heard no agreement at all. The issue of foreign aid is in there, the issue of the tone. What did you think as you listened to that debate?